Uhuru, Uhuru Chairman, Uhuru Comrades, Uhuru planners and participants of this very important preparatory conference of the National Black Political Agenda for Self-Determination. I apologize for not being able to be at this very important conference with you personally, but I am extremely grateful for an opportunity to present a short message to you from the Reparations Working Group. Since being appointed the Reparations Working Group Chair of the Black is Back Coalition, I have consistently attempted to bring forth the awareness of the very important outcome of the 2001 World Conference Against Racism that was held in Durban, South Africa. Not only on the outcome, but what that outcome actually means to us who are championing the cause of repair or reparations. At that very important World Conference put on by the United Nations, an outcome document was produced. That outcome document was called the Durban Declaration and Program of Action. And generally, when a World Conference is placed, the outcome document is such that settles the issue on whatever that World Conference was called for. And so in this instance, the outcome document, the Durban Declaration and Program of Action, settles some very important issues around racism, global white racism in the world. And particularly, three important clauses are in that document. One, that slavery, the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, and apartheid were crimes against humanity. Now, crimes against humanity have no statute of limitations, so those entities that engage in those crimes, if they're still in existence today, then they're guilty today. They're criminals today. Second important statement or outcome in that document, outcome of that conference, was that racism was an economic activity. It was not just a psychological or a social activity, but it was primarily economical. And that those nations that engaged in these practices were benefited economically: slavery, slave trade, colonialism, apartheid, and that the nations and people who were the victims were devastated economically by these crimes. And third, that there is an obligation on behalf of those who engage in these crimes to rectify and repair the people who they so criminalize, victimize. And so that's very important, because today there are people still trying to make a case for reparations when the case was made and settled in Durban. COBRA defined reparations as the process of repairing, healing, and restoring the people who were injured due to their group identity in violation of their fundamental human rights by government, corporation, institution, or individuals. So in this definition that was accepted by the African Descendant Caucus that met the following year in Bridgetown, Barbados, we understand that there are four classes of criminals. And again, we can call these countries, these governments, these corporations, these institutions, and these individual families criminals, because that was the outcome of this World Conference Against Racism. So there's four classes of criminals. However, there is not an international entity that allows us to enforce this declaration. So we, people of African descent, must take it upon ourselves to enforce this declaration, to bring the criminals to justice. We can do that with corporations by direct actions against corporations, direct actions against institutions like schools, like hospitals, like even financial institutions that have benefited. We can do that through direct action against individual families, like here in Chicago, the McCormick family is just one. And so reparations enforcement is really the order of the day. Now that brings us to an action that's starting here in Chicago called Reparations Road to the White House. Here we are attempting to enforce our right to be repaired by this particular government, that engaged in all type of criminal activities against us during the transatlantic slave trade, during the period of enslavement, during the period of apartheid, also known as Jim Crow segregation. In June of this year, a state representative here in Chicago introduced a legislation in the State House of Representatives calling on President Obama to create a slavery study commission, similar to H.R. 40 that has been introduced to Congress, National Congress, by Congressman John Conyers for over 20 years. This particular resolution, which passed unanimously by the Illinois House, calls on President Obama to create this commission through executive order, bypassing Congress before he leaves. Now, with any criminal, once it has been found that a crime has been committed, then there's an investigation. Now, the investigation is to determine what was the extent of the crime, to determine what was the extent of the injury of the crime, to determine how many people were actually victimized by the crime, to determine what should be the penalty for the crime, to determine what should be the methods and means of repairing whatever harms that were done by the crime. And so, although many people say this is just a study bill, but we're looking at it as an investigation into the crimes against our humanity that have been committed by this particular government for over 400 years. So yes, it's designed to study, but it's also designed to investigate and determine what policies, programs, and practices are needed to engage the repair of our peoplehood here in this country. Now, this resolution was passed again in June 30th of this year. And this resolution also stated that it should be presented to the president. So a group of coalition members, beginning here in Chicago, have assembled under the action called Reparations Road to the White House, where we want to take thousands of people of African descent to the White House to deliver this resolution to the president before he leaves office. And through the Black is Back Coalition, we determined that we would take that resolution we would have that mobilization at the White House on November 5th during the Black is Back Coalition March and Rally. We have a Facebook page, Reparations Road to the White House, where you can join on, commit to making sure that thousands descend upon the White House to present this resolution, to demand an investigation, a determination of the crimes that were committed against us. You can call it a study bill, whatever. We know what we want and how we want to craft it. And we want to make sure that this president on his way out has a final opportunity to side on the side of African people and to make sure that whoever comes in to the White House, because 2 days later there will be an election, whoever comes into the White House know that they would have to deal with this issue of reparations and the Black political agenda for self-determination immediately upon entering the office of the presidency. So we invite all those who are there at the preparatory conference to go to the Facebook page, Reparations Road to the White House, commit to being a part of the planning process to get 10, 15, 20,000 people to D.C. November 5th at the March and Rally, and take part in the conference on the Black political agenda for self-determination, the national Black political agenda for self-determination. With that, I say uhuru, Reparations Now, Pamoja, Tushinde, and Billy Shaka. Together, we will win. Uhuru.